Me and my family recently boarded Utopia of the Seas at 10:15 a.m. This early boarding time really just set us up for a great start to our vacation and an actual easy boarding day that was more stress-free. This recording that I'm making today is to help you understand what are your options to have the best boarding day experience boarding Utopia of the Seas. Let's go ahead and jump in. By the end of this video, you will learn all about the tips on arriving in Orlando and traveling to the cruise port, how to expedite the boarding process, and all about how to make the most of your first day on board Utopia of the Seas. So let's first start about getting to the port. Port Canaveral is about 45 to 60 minutes from Orlando. It's about 40 to 50 minutes from Melbourne Airport. So my advice would be, and this is what we did. We traveled in the day before. We stayed in a hotel that was probably about 5 or 10 minutes from the airport. So we actually stayed in Port Canaveral. And that next day, we just basically took an Uber to get to the port. However, if you have decided to fly in the day before, and let's say you're staying in Orlando, my recommendation would be get up early the next day and actually get to the actual cruise port as soon as you can. Because of the fact that you have a 45 minutes to potentially up to an hour drive if you're staying in Orlando, or 45 minutes to 50 minutes or so drive for Melbourne area, you want to just make sure that you give yourself enough time, you and your family, wherever you're cruising with or traveling with, to get to the port in case there's traffic or any kind of delays. So another thing I'll mention is that most of the hotels that are in the Port Canaveral area, they all offer, I believe majority of them, some kind of shuttle that'll get you from the hotel to the cruise port. And because those actual hotels are so close to the cruise port, I would say any hotel that's in the Port Canaveral area, you're no more than probably 15 minutes or 20 minutes at max away from getting to cruise port. So one option would definitely be to go ahead and just use the services at your hotel. Use their shuttle to get you to the airport based on your boarding time. And I'll go a little bit more into, about options for early boarding a little bit later in this video that you might find beneficial. Now, if you're driving, like you've come in town, you live locally, or you live not too far, you live in Florida, or you just decided to drive to Port Canaveral, you do have the option of parking at the cruise terminal. Again, I would highly recommend probably coming in the day before. I usually give this advice to everyone just because of delays, but you can park at the cruise terminal and you'll pay a daily fee, and it's based on the length of your cruise, but you'll pay that fee. It can go up to $100+ depending upon the day of your cruise, and just park there. Another thing too is if you're coming into town and let's say you have a rental car that you picked up from like the Orlando airport or Melbourne airport, you can usually have a different drop off. So let's say you want to drop the car off in Port Canaveral at like a car rental services in Port Canaveral. You can do that, and they also usually have a shuttle service that can take you to the port. Or an option is you just take an Uber where you dropped the rental car off to take you over to the cruise port. Now, I'll say for me and my family, again, it was my mom and my brother. We went on the Utopia of the Seas for that sailing. We opted to actually, even though we were at a hotel that had a shuttle, we just were a little bit nervous about it just because there were a lot of people that were traveling, and we wanted to make sure that, we could get there in time because we did have such an early boarding. So we opted to just do an Uber, and that's what we did. And the Uber ride took us maybe the max, I would say 5 minutes to get from our hotel over to Port Canaveral to check in. Another bit of advice or pro tip here as well, if you are staying in Port Canaveral or even in Orlando and you've decided you want to just drive into or take an Uber or Lyft, rideshare service into Port Canaveral, is to see if you can check out from your hotel either through the television, through an app, or or by phone, just some other method other than necessarily having to go to the front desk. And the reason is that usually when there are ships like Utopia or near any kind of cruise port where there's a large sailing, there's a lot of people trying to check out at the same time. So I would just advise that if you can have an alternate way that you can check out, if you're comfortable with that, and maybe getting a copy of your receipt, your itinerary, your hotel portfolio by email, that would be the best option because it's going to save you a lot of time and having to go to the front desk to actually check out from your room. So I know I've mentioned before in this video around why I don't really recommend arriving the day of your actual boarding day or the day you're going to be boarding a cruise ship or embarkation day. And that really is because of delays. I think everyone know that your flight could be delayed. The flight could be canceled for some unknown reason. So really, it just helps to make sure and cut down on you having a potential situation where you might miss your cruise. I will say this though, if you do opt to go ahead and fly in the day of, I would say use the cruise lines, like for Royal Caribbean, they call it's called Air to Sea. Use their program, their air program, where they actually will make sure and ensure that if there's something that were to happen with your airline, with your actual plane, your flight, they'll help make sure you get to your cruise on time to board. So that I would say would probably be the only case. Now I get it. Most people sometimes, it may be a matter of not paying an actual expense of flying in the day before. But if you do decide to fly in the day before, you can use that option. And in addition to that, if you decide not to go with using the airline, having the actual cruise line create or do your airline for you for that guarantee, just make sure you get out on the first flight from your local airport for that day, just to get there as early as possible so you don't risk it. Now, when you arrive actually at the terminal, you've been dropped off by either a shuttle from the hotel, you're parked at the terminal yourself, or you actually have been dropped off by a rideshare service like Uber or Lyft. You're going to notice at the terminal, because especially for Utopia the Seas, if you're sailing on that sailing, you can get 5,000 plus people on the ship, and that doesn't even include the crew. So there's a lot of people that are going to be boarding the ship. So if you have an earlier boarding time, it may not be as crowded early on. So in arriving at the actual terminal, you should expect that there's going to be some lines and more people. My experience was, because we did have a 10:15, we had a 10 a.m. arrival time, but we got there about 10:15, is that it wasn't really that bad. The good thing too is that the terminal had a lot of staff directing traffic. So people were moving very quickly in and out, people getting dropped off and moving on. People that had actually come in and had drove themselves in, they actually were dropping everything off, and then they would go and find a parking space and then come back down, walk back down to actually check in. So I would just say the expectation of arriving at the terminal, depending upon whichever way you come in, if you're coming in earlier, I would say better than later in the day, is that there's going to be a lot of people, but it does move very quickly and it's very organized. Now, another thing to think about is once you've arrived and you've actually gotten out of the vehicle or you've been dropped off, is the next step is you need to give your luggage to a porter. One benefit or one critical thing that I know we did, and I saw a lot of people doing that I really do advise, is to make sure your luggage tags are already attached to the luggage you're going to be given to the porter. This is because it actually makes it quicker for you to give your bag to the porter. And you also, if you use, I know for our luggage tag, and I don't have an example to show you, but I can show you in a future video. We had luggage tags that were like these plastic envelopes, but they had like a metal hoop that actually attached to our luggage. So because we had that kind of luggage tab, it was pretty secure. So I wasn't so concerned about it falling off or getting pulled off. So if you have a luggage tag like that and you attach it to your bag, it just makes it a lot easier to make sure, one, that your bag is going to get to where you want it to go to, and also two, that you don't have to fiddle around with stuff when you're trying to drop your bag off to the porter. I also say too, with the porters, one thing that I really liked, and I've seen this in other cruise lines as well, is that the porters do a great job of making sure that you have not left your passport, your official birth certificate, any documentation that you might need when you check in the luggage that they're going to be taking from you. They will ask you, have you made sure that you didn't leave your passport? Do you also have something in your luggage that you're not supposed to have in your luggage? So I really do appreciate them for that. And they do a good job at that. And I usually will give them, depending upon how many bags that I'm giving them, probably a couple of dollars per bag, because I know sometimes our bags are very heavy. And they do a good job in making sure that our bags get to our cabin. So I really like to just award them for that. Now, another tip for getting through, I would say, security and checking in once you've given your bag to the porter and you've actually now gone into the cruise terminal building, is to make sure you have your documents ready to show for checking in. Now, one pleasant surprise that me and my mother had, but my brother actually didn't have, is that the night before when we did our health check-in, where you basically, just check off that you're in good health, you're feeling well. And they usually do this about, I would say 24 hours before your cruise. Royal Caribbean, just in your app, you'll see this notification for you to fill it out. We did that. And then after we completed it, it popped up that said that we had express boarding. Now, I was surprised by that because we had already had priority boarding, because one, we had purchased what's called the Key, which is a program that Royal Caribbean has that I'll get more into a little bit later. But we purchased the Key, and the Key allows you to have priority boarding. So basically, you're one of the first set of people probably outside of the suites that are going to be getting on the ship. That actually helped to expedite our getting through security. So I would say one of the things, and it's not really clear, I'll be honest, about how you can guarantee if you get express boarding. But I do know that for me and my mother, what we did, and my brother did a little bit differently, is that we did everything through the app. We did our photos. You have to have like a photo of yourself that's going to be available on the app. We did that. We also, did a copy of our passports. We did a screenshot of that from the app. We added all of the information from the app. And what I've been told and understand is that if you do a lot of those things through the app, you have a higher chance of getting express boarding. So I would probably advise everyone, if you can't do everything through the app, not necessarily from the Royal Caribbean website, but use their app to actually process all of your kind of pre-boarding checks and steps that you have to take. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more, and I'm going to look at my notes around the key just to give you an idea of what's included. And I'll talk about that in conjunction with us boarding. So again, we arrived, I told you we arrived at 10:15. We came in because my mother had express check-in. We went through the express check-in line. And then once we went through the express check-in line, what happens is that it's kind of like they're checking you in before you go through security. Usually you go through security, then you go upstairs to an actual a room where they have like tons and tons of seats, and there's where you actually check in each at different stations to actually get to check in for your cruise. We actually were able to do that before we went through security downstairs in the building. So we went through that express security lane. They basically just checked our mobile boarding pass and checked our passports because we used a passport. And then we went through security and we did not have to stop at all anymore. That was it. Now, my brother, like I mentioned, because he didn't get express boarding, he had to first go through security. Then he had to go upstairs and get in a line with everybody else. And there weren't, again, tons of people that were there at that time because it was early. And also I will mention, and I forgot to mention this, they gave us a sticker that said priority boarding that we had to wear as we kind of went through each of the steps until we boarded the ship. So one of the things thinking about this as well is if you get express checking, you may not necessarily want to consider getting the key. But the thing is that you may not know that you have express checking until right before you are getting ready to board the ship the night before, until you do your health check. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's the key, and I'm going to look over here at my notes. Now, the key is a program that not only allows you to have priority boarding, but some other key benefits as well. So in addition to early boarding, and usually you're going to be boarding at 10 a.m. and that's the reason why we had such an early boarding time. You'll have also carry-on bag drop off at the delivery of your stateroom. So when you actually get on the ship, you have, in addition to what I just mentioned, you also have a lunch in the main dining room, leveraging like a special menu. When you go into that area, there's actually Royal Caribbean staff that are there that will take your baggage. Like, let's say you check your big bag with the porter, but you brought on your carry-on bag with you. And let's say it's a rollerboard, like small carry-on bag, and you have also like a backpack or a tote. Let's say you don't want to have to carry that roll-on that you brought on the ship that you checked in through security. You prefer, because remember, too, with Royal Caribbean, your room isn't ready until 2 p.m. So you're going to be carrying all this stuff with you until you can check into your room at 2 p.m. So you would take that roller bag, you would give it to the staff in the same place you're about to go into the main dining room for lunch, which I believe opens around 11:30 a.m., 11:30 to 12:30 or 11:30 to 1. Sorry for the correction there. You would give it to the staff and they would just write your room number on it. And when you go to your room at 2 p.m., your bag is already in your room. So that's one of the benefits that they have as a part of the key. You also will have access to fast lane at onboard activities. So if you're going to one of the venues for a play, or you're going to where they're having like one of the water shows, or what other venues, you'll actually have priority or fast lane access to those. Priority departure at tender ports from ship to shore. So that basically is that if there's a port that you're going to that the boat can't or the ship can't dock right at the port, and you're going to be like out in the water, and you have to like take a tender or a smaller ship to get to the port, you have priority access for getting on those first. One of the big things that I say is a key thing with having the key is you get one device included with their internet service, and that internet service is their Surf and Stream, and it's a high-speed internet service. It's included when you pay for the key program. If you don't pay for the key program, you're still going to be paying that $23, $24, whatever the price is at the time of your sailing for just having internet service. So that's one of the things that's included with the key that you don't have to pay additional for. And then I'll say the final thing that's a major benefit of the key is on debarkation day, you actually will have an a la carte breakfast. And you also will be able to have priority debarking off of the ship or getting off of the ship. Once you do get off the ship, your luggage will be in a special section where all the luggage is, like once you get off the ship and you kind of go down to exit the port or to exit the terminal, there's going to be a special place that everyone who purchased the key, all your luggage is there, and it's really easy to get your luggage and find it. So that's an experience that we had when we actually were getting off the ship. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through those options just so you had a better understanding of what's included in the key. And we did purchase the key. It was around $165 for each one of us for the full. I think we had a 5-day sailing for Utopia of the Seas. So it may be a different price depending upon when you go, but if it's something that you feel like you want to have early boarding and some of the other options that I went through, especially with the internet, then that might be something for you to consider. So now let's talk about, now you have gone through security, you've actually boarded the ship. And for us, we boarded the ship again. It was quite quickly. We boarded the ship. And when we boarded the ship, we were actually very surprised with how massive the ship is. One of the first things that we did when we first boarded the ship is we went to Starbucks, which was very interesting because I was like, we're going to Starbucks when we're actually getting on a cruise ship. Let's try and do something a little bit different than what we would just do in our everyday life. But anyway, we went to Starbucks. My mom is a Starbucks fan. So one of the things we thought to do when we first got on the ship, and I highly recommend for everybody just to make sure you have a really good boarding day, is you have to get to know the ship. It is a large ship. There's a lot to get to know, and you have a couple of days to get through it. But coming in with a plan is going to be very important. And because depending upon the time you do get on the ship, I do hope and recommend that you can try and get an earlier boarding time if possible. But based on the time you get on the ship, let's say you get on and it's lunchtime. You want to figure out like, where's the best place to go for lunch? Many people go straight to what's called the Windjammer, which is where there's the buffet on Royal Caribbean, which is great. It's just that it's everybody going there at the same time. So it's pretty crowded. So they have other options that you can go, and I'll show you now and talk a little bit about those different options. So in addition to the Windjammer, you can go to the main dining room. If it's open for lunch or if you have the key, that's included. So that would be only if you had the key. There's also the Solarian Bistro. There's Sorrento's, which is a pizza place that you can go to. There's Cafe Promenade, and there's also the Park Cafe. And there are a couple other places, El Loco Fresh, and then also the Boardwalk Dog House. So those will be probably your main options for lunch on board the ship. Now, there could be other options that are special for your sailing. So you'll just have to check your Royal Caribbean app to see what other options might be there. So then let's say you've had your lunch, and now it's later in the day, and you're trying to consider dinner, where you want to do for dinner. So hopefully, and I'll give you this advice too, consider if you really do want to do any specialty dining ahead of time. And the reason why I say that is that you will have the option of probably getting the best pricing and discounts if you purchase those before you get on the ship. If you said, okay, I only want to do 2 specialty restaurants. So let's say there's a particular place, like I know we went to the Mason Jar, which we really liked. You want to go to the Mason Jar. Or you want to go to Giovanni's, which is an Italian place. Just know that ahead of time, and then just go ahead and book it for the number of people that are going to be in your sailing with you, because you're going to get a discount on it. Now, not to say you can't do it when you get on a ship, you perfectly can. It's just that it's more reasonable, as far as a charge if you do it ahead of time. So I would just say recommend that. But also when you do reserve it ahead of time, you do have to also select the day and the time that you want to make that reservation. So just know that as well if you're going to do it ahead of time. But for dinner, you can decide to go to the Windjammer. You can decide to go to all the other places that I mentioned that you can go to for lunch. In addition to that, you could potentially go to one of the specialty restaurants if that's the case. What we ended up doing is we did not go to a specialty restaurant the first day. One is because we were quite tired, just because it was a lot that was going on that day. And we just decided to go to the main dining room. If you do decide to go to the main dining room, they have My Time Dining, which basically you determine when you want to dine. What happens is that when you go to My Time Dining, or when you go in, and you'll have that same time that you can go to the main dining room every night, and you'll actually have the same staff that'll be helping you every night as well. You get an actual table number that you'll see it in your app, and that's where you'll be waited on, or you'll be having dinner every night. Now, you don't have to go to the main dining room, of course, every night, but if you choose to go, that's where you would be going. So that would be my advice really for first day around lunch and also dinner options, just to make sure you know kind of what's available. There's plenty of places to eat. So you definitely will not have any problem finding a place to have a meal. Now, as far as navigating or getting to know the ship, the first day that you boarded, it's important just to kind of have some ideas of like what's in the forward of the ship, what's in the back of the ship, what's in the middle. Just know that the promenade kind of is the main kind of walkway for or area for Royal Caribbean that can kind of get you from the back to the front or the front to the back of the ship. Also, too, they have really good signage around the ship. You know, near the elevators, near the main dining room. Everywhere you go, you'll see that there's also a lot of signage. In the mobile app, there's a map that you can use as well. You can always just ask staff that's on the ship. They're perfectly happy and willing. And then also too, sometimes other sailors that may have been on a couple of sailings before, you know, if they see you look a little bit lost, they may even say something and, you know, tell you about where you want to go for certain things. Even though it's a very large ship, it really wasn't that bad. We kind of took that first day, that boarding day, to kind of get to know the lay of the land. Like where's Central Park, and you know how Central Park connects from the front to the back of the ship. Like where were places that we knew we needed to go, we wanted to go, different venues that we were going to be going to for entertainment, where were we going to be going for our specialty diamond. We kind of figured out where those things were on day one, just so that we kind of had an idea, so that for day two through the rest of our sailings, we knew how to get there. But honestly, after the first day, it was pretty easy getting around the ship. So I would just say, if you leverage that time on boarding day to kind of just to get to know the ship, it definitely helps and pays off later when you're trying to just navigate what to do. And again, there's always signage and things around ship and people that you can ask if you get lost or you have a question. So my first impressions with the cabin. Now, me and my mom shared a cabin. And the cabin was, I was surprised at how spacious it was for two people. And especially with my mom, who brings a lot of stuff. But we had enough space. So we had the bed transformed into two twins so that, you know, we had separate beds. The configuration of our cabin was that our beds were closer to the balcony, and we did have a Central Park balcony cabin. My mom was a little concerned about the water, so that's why we decided not to get an ocean view balcony. We ended up getting Central Park, but honestly, I really like the Central Park balcony. I was thinking that it might be too noisy. It really wasn't. Now, there was music at night on certain days, but honestly, once you close the door, it was almost soundproof. Now, you could hear a little bit of sound, but it wasn't enough to disturb you. And I really liked that you could look down and you could kind of see, you saw natural trees and plants, and you saw people walking. It was really lovely. So we really did enjoy having a cabin that actually overlooked Central Park. Now, the cabin itself had all the amenities. It was a great cabin. We had more than enough space for storage. We were able to slide our suitcases under our beds, which actually helped with us not just having stuff hanging around. The bathroom was spacious as well. There was enough space for two people. There was shelving. The shower was pretty good. The shower had really good water pressure. The water got very hot. There really wasn't much we can complain about. It was a really nice cabin. So I can definitely recommend, because I stayed in the actual Central Park balcony. I would recommend that if you are looking for a cabin where you have enough space, I could say even 3 or 4 people could sleep there, because it also had a couch that could be converted into a bed as well. There was enough space for 3 to 4 people that could be in that cabin. The balcony also was pretty nice as well and pretty large. So I would definitely recommend that if it's something that you're interested in, you don't necessarily want to have an ocean view, or you just want the experience of having like a Central Park balcony, I recommend it for sure. Now that I've told you all about the best tips and advice that I have from my sailing on Utopia of the Seas, I'd really like to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what else would you like to know about Utopia of the Seas? What other things can I share with you that would be of value? Also, too, if you found that this video was of value too, please like and share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.